This edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of world-class software like PDF Pen for Mac, PDF Pen Pro for Mac, PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander for Mac, and Text Expander for iPhone and iPad. Learn more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. And by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like MacVoices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Notables on Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, you've been waiting for it for a long time. I've got Mr. Bryan Chaffin back. I think he's the navigator on the Spruce Goose. Is going to be his next position. What do you think, Bryan?
Guten Tag.
Here we go.
I am editor-in-chief at the Mac Observer, chief navigator of the. I like that one. I'm gonna borrow that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good.
I'm gonna make some noise and then borrow it.
Okay. And maybe we can. Well, if nobody knows what the Spruce Goose is, they can go and check it out. But
yeah, there's a Google for that.
You just always have this Howard Hughes vibe going. Excuse me.
Really, I was looking for a kind of a dirty Jesus thing today.
Okay, well, maybe
Howard Hughes. I have a Howard Hughes vibe.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what am I doing wrong? Seriously, what am I doing wrong?
Well, no, not nothing wrong. Just that kind of.
Oh, the cool Howard Hughes, not the like freaky weirdo, fingernails like out to.
Oh no, not that. No, the cool Howard Hughes who was just mysterious.
I see, mysterious.
Yeah,
excellent.
Mysterious.
Yes.
Mysterious.
Let's pretend that's what you actually meant. That's good. Thanks.
So how have you been?
I've been better, Chuck.
Okay.
How about you?
I'm doing fine. Fine.
There are things in my life that are absolutely fantastic, and recent days have been a little bit more difficult.
Well, I'm sure you're not alone in those feelings.
I am sure that I am not alone in those feelings.
Yeah, but we're gonna try to stay away from that because you and I already spent an hour debating it before the show. So.
We did, as a matter of fact.
So let's talk about something Apple and Mac like.
Okay. I'm
curious to see about what your thoughts are on the new MacBook Pros from the standpoint of. And it's bugging me a bit that I keep hearing people say, we want a redesign, we want something new. And I say, okay, what is it that you want? Well, nobody can quite tell me, but they just want something new. And at some point, both with the MacBook or MacBook Pro, I should say, and even with the iPhone, we've boiled it down to such a simple thing that how much more can they do with the form factor or the design to satisfy people, or have we just hit a dead end with that?
Well, are you? I've seen this elsewhere. Are you sort of alluding to the idea that we want Apple to innovate, but we don't? But we insist Apple not change anything?
Perhaps, but also just for the idea that at some point. I'm not going to try to do it here. I'll disrupt something on my desk, but, well, no, I won't. I'll pick this up. Okay, so at some point, this is a notepad, all right? There are only so many more things that you can do with the notepad to redesign it. And I'm just starting to feel like, have we reached the point of the perfect form factor, the perfect everything? We still have some interface issues to work out. But until we have a radically different way of interacting with a MacBook or an iPhone, are we approaching a place where there is no more design improvement to be done?
Okay, well, this is an interesting line of discussion to me, in that I don't see people upset about the MacBook Pro because it's not freakishly innovative enough. I mean, that's like it is. That, I mean, it seems to be what you're at. I mean, it seems to. Why are you asking me this?
Well, okay, I'm asking it because I've heard on several podcasts, one of which you were involved in, someone criticizing Apple for not making enough My interpretation is they're not making enough changes. That we've had the same design now, the same basic design for several iterations, and Apple needs to do something new. And I ask, what is it that you want?
What I want, my complaint about the MacBook Pro is that it's not very pro and it's very expensive. My complaint about the MacBook Pro is that it can have a maximum of 16 gigs of RAM, which is not pro at all. And the reason why it can have a maximum 16 gigs of RAM is because it's so thin, and if you put more RAM in it, it's going to overheat. And my problem with that is it's a freaking pro machine. So if you want to have a pro machine, why don't you go ahead and not make it quite as thin and make it to where you can put 32 gigs of memory in it, which is a pro level of memory. So, I mean, like this business with making, no one was sitting around going, the MacBook Pro is great. If only it could be thinner. If only it could be thinner, then I want to get a MacBook Pro. No one's saying that. What people are actually saying is they want more battery life. They want more ports, which I don't have too much empathy for, because 4 USB-C ports is really cool. And it needs more battery life, and it needs more processing power, and it needs more video power. And all of those things don't need thinner. That's my problem. My problem is with how expensive this thing is for what you get compared to what you can get on the PC side, with the exception that the PCs are uglier and thicker.
And they're PCs.
And they're PCs, yeah, which, screw that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that the Touch Bar is really cool. Well, let me rephrase that. I haven't actually used it yet. I think that the idea of the Touch Bar is really cool. And I think that I wrote a piece saying that I thought that the Touch Bar was Apple's double down against toaster fridges, and that Apple is sticking to its guns on the idea that people don't really want to touch their laptops screens. And an argument I have a lot of empathy with, despite the fact that some people are embracing that on the Windows side. Lost my train of thought, Chuck.
That's okay. Okay, so first of all, I happen to agree with you on the Touch Bar, because for lots of reasons. I think it's an interesting. I hesitate to use the word compromise, because that sounds like it's something they should be doing, but I don't think they should be doing a touch screen on a laptop, or for that matter on a desktop like I'm talking to you on now. And here's why. And I used this example the other night at dinner with some friends. All right, couple days ago, my iPhone rang. Well, rang. It vibrated because I had it turned off and I couldn't find it. But my Apple Watch is vibrating on my wrist. Okay, great. So I bring my Apple Watch up, answer the call, all right, and do the conversation here. All right. Well, after about 3 or 4 minutes, this starts to get a little bit uncomfortable. Okay. And after any more than that, it starts to get very uncomfortable. And so if you're trying to have a protracted conversation, this is not the way you want to have it. Okay.
Have you considered that you're holding your arm wrong? Just kidding. Just kidding.
No, but my point is that you don't want to be, moving your arm all over the place on a big screen. I've maybe people with iPads that do that, but most of the iPads I see that people are using a lot of manipulation. They're not doing the same kind of manipulation intensive things, because that's not the way the apps are designed. And if they're typing or whatever, they're laying it down flat.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And to that end, I think that I think the Touch Bar is sort of the best of both worlds. So the point I made in my piece about Apple doubling down is that if we go back to netbooks, do you remember netbooks?
Sure.
LOL netbooks, right?
Yeah, they were there for a little while.
And back when netbooks were a thing, like analysts in particular are like, what are you going to do about netbooks? When are you going to announce a netbook strategy? How are you going to cope with netbooks? What are you going to do with netbooks? There was one in my favorite thing of all time, and I probably even mentioned it with you before, and I can't remember which analyst it was, but there was a mainstream important analyst who downgraded Apple because Apple hadn't articulated a netbook strategy that wouldn't cannibalize MacBook sales. So not only was Apple being downgraded for something it hadn't announced, but it was being downgraded for something it hadn't announced, and how it would keep that thing that it hadn't announced from cannibalizing sales of another product. I mean, it was the most idiotic. It's stupid. Just the reasoning is stupefying. And so the whole time, all through that period, it was about maybe a year and a half, maybe a year, where Apple was getting hammered for this. And Apple was always very specific. Both Steve Jobs and Tim Cook were very specific about denigrating netbooks without denigrating the customer need that netbooks were trying to fill, which was for a light portable device that was mainly aimed at consumption and email. And I'm going to pat myself on the back because I'm really fond of doing that when, especially on this particular topic. I said that Tim Cook was telling us that Apple would compete with netbooks with an iPod SuperTouch. In other words, that Apple would try to meet the exact same market demand that was being filled with netbooks, but they would meet that not with a netbook, but with an iPod SuperTouch is what I call it. And lo and behold, Apple ended up introducing the iPad, and netbooks were gone. Like within a year, netbooks were just gone. The same thing was the case with these toaster fridges. Apple denigrated toaster fridges and denigrated the way people were expected to interact with a toaster fridge, but they never denigrated the thing that toaster fridges were trying to address, which is the value of a touch interface on a desktop computer or a laptop computer. They never said that was a problem. And boom, we end up getting the touch bar, where we get the benefits of the touch interface in a way that I think makes a lot more sense than a toaster fridge.
This is going to be a boring discussion because I agree with you. I agree with you.
Next topic.
Yeah, I think it was a really interesting way to bring something new to the table and really not lose anything. Because at least in theory, if you really want just the function keys, you can get them back. You just have to have it written, have the appropriate programming for it. But you can do so much more with that space. And let's face it, those function keys haven't served any real useful purpose. I mean, we've all mapped things to them, or Apple has mapped things to them. But at the end of the day, they're basically wasting space. So now they're not anymore.
The thing I'm still confused on is how you do a force reboot.
Don't know, and I haven't gotten my MacBook Pro yet, so I can't answer the question.
Right. Yeah, I don't think anyone has answered that question yet. Yeah, so it's interesting, and I really want. There is how Apple does this staged rollout thing for especially for new hardware features. To bring, like, Force Touch was out on touchpads first. Wait, touchpads? That doesn't sound right.
No, it was on the Magic Trackpad.
Thank you, trackpad. That's the word.
Magic Trackpad.
Yeah, I'm supposed to know these things. The trackpad, it was there first, and then it was on the Apple Watch, and then it was on iPhone, and still hasn't come to iPad yet, which is really weird to me, but whatever. And Touch ID was iPhone first, and then iPad, and now with it's with this Touch Bar. And the problem with something like Touch Bar and Force Touch and 3D Touch is that they are massive interface changes, and I feel like they need to be available across the system for everybody to fully invest in them. And with the Touch Bar, I think if like the last thing I want to do is to get use on the Touch Bar on my laptop, and then sit down at my desktop and then not have it. So give me a keyboard with it. I'm sure that keyboard is going to cost at least $200, but I personally would shell out the money for a keyboard with a Touch Bar.
Isn't there, though, a certain reality here that Apple can't, and I'm not sure they could, rev their entire product line at any given moment to say, okay, we're going all in on the touch bar, or we're going all in or on something else. That there are some benefits to the staged rollouts, and sometimes
there are absolutely some benefits to it. Absolutely some benefits to it. But most of those benefits are for Apple from a manufacturing and control standpoint. From a like touch. Force touch needs to be across all iOS devices ASAP. Same thing with Touch ID, and it almost is. And then the same thing with this touch bar. We need the touch bar. I like, by the way, did you see that GitHub project?
No. So
there's a GitHub project out there that lets you run a virtual touch bar on your macOS Sierra screen. Not interested in that. Doesn't really help me any. But there is also a separate app in the same project that you can compile for your iPad that turns your iPad into nothing but a touch bar. So you and when you connect that iPad to your Mac via USB cable, you can use it as a touch bar.
Okay.
So at least until Apple squishes it, but it's out there right now, and and don't get me, it's for geeks who know what they're doing. It's for people who are comfortable, compiling an app, and you have to get your hands a hold of the specific build of macOS Sierra 10.12.1. There's a specific build that has the touch bar, and the other builds don't have it. Like the build that I've got on my iMac does not have the touch bar in it. So it's not for everyone to go rush out and try, but I'm super interested in it, and I would love to be able to use my iPad as a touch bar, especially if it was an older iPad, so I could just leave it as my touch bar all the time. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. I mean, part of me says that I would need some way. Well, of course, if it's just launching an app, it's not that big a deal. It would be a little bit of a hassle to clear off another space on my desk. It's for
apps that end up building in controls, like Logic or what Adobe was doing was pretty cool. That's where I think, and that's where I want Touch Bar to be available on all Macs as quickly as possible, because that's when developers will take the time to do cool things with it.
Yeah, there are a couple. There's at least one, and I think there are a couple of them out there, Final Cut supplemental apps for your iOS device that will turn your iOS device into a control surface for Final Cut, which I've played with a little bit, and they're pretty good. I mean, especially once you get kind of used to them. The challenge with it, of course, is that there's no tactile interface. It's just a piece of glass, so you've got to make sure your fingers are hitting the right thing. But on the other hand, it's a totally programmable control surface. So
sure.
If you use a particular set of Final Cut commands or subset, and you can customize those to just have those, whether they're buttons or other adjustments, it is very, very nice.
Fair enough.
You slipped in Tim Cook's name in there. Where do you stand on Mr. Cook as CEO of Apple at this point?
I am still bullish on Tim Cook as CEO of Apple. I think that all throughout his term, he's been looked at with a very short-term magnifying glass. And I mean, in 18 months after Steve died, people were questioning Tim Cook's ability to usher in an innovative product. I mean, which was just ridiculous. And I think that we're not going to understand Tim Cook's ability to bring innovation to market until we've had enough time for seriously new products to work their way through Apple's R&D efforts. I am cranky as all expletive that the Mac product line is, in my opinion, languishing. It makes me cranky that Apple is selling a 3.5-year-old Mac Pro for the same price that it was available at 3 years ago when it finally actually shipped. I'm cranky about that. I am cranky about that. I'm cranky about how long it's taking Apple to release new Mac models. In general, I like the new MacBook Pro, despite everything I was complaining about it not being quite pro enough. I like a lot of what Apple has done with that thing, but it took too long, and so I don't get that. I don't understand why we've gone from a 9-month to 12-month cycle on new Macs to a seemingly 18-month cycle on new Macs, or 3.5-year cycle on new Macs. I don't get that. But in general, I think that Apple is working on seriously cool new stuff. Some of it may not come to market. Now, we've talked about the Apple Car. Apple Car is still a real project, and it is a project that is being Bob Mansfielded right now, which is good. But one of the things about being Bob Mansfielded may be that he cancels it, and that could happen. So the Apple Car may or may not come to market, but there's other stuff that Apple is working on, and when it does come to market, then we can judge Tim Cook's ability to usher in innovation to the market.
Do you think that the change in watchOS is indicative of Tim Cook's Apple? That they took the original design of the OS and for better or worse, and I think the general agreement pretty much is for the better, changed it. They listened to people and they made a bunch of changes, and we'll probably see more going forward. But as far as just an idea that, okay, we're not just going to continue to hammer this home as this is the way you use it, they heard some people say how they were using it and changed. Is that Tim Cook, or would that have happened under Steve? And I hate going back and talking about what Steve would have done, but it just seems to be the game we have to play at times. So
we don't really have to play it. Steve told Tim not to worry about it. Well,
but we have to play it because everybody else is out there playing it. So I'm asking you: do you think that's indicative of Tim Cook?
I think that Tim Cook has a very strong track record of listening to people. I think that Tim Cook listened on Maps. I think he listened on iOS. I think that he's listened. I'm going to maybe have trouble coming up with all the examples I'd want to come up with, but I would look at the fact that star ratings, which disappeared in iOS 10, are in iOS 10.2 beta. Might not make the final release, but as of right now, star ratings are coming back. And that can only be because people were complaining about it. There have been a number of things where Apple did something and met enough pushback that they changed it. I think this is very indicative of Tim Cook listening to customers. And I mean, if you really want to compare it to Steve, I think that the better comparison would be that Steve himself would have seen a lot of these things before they got released. But that was Steve's gift. Steve's gift was somewhat knowing what we wanted before we knew we wanted it. Part of Steve's gift was not caring what people said and just doing what he thought was right. And part of Steve's gifts was this incredible focus on like the final 5% that most people are even unaware that exists in any particular product. And those aren't Tim's particular strengths, and we've seen that with I think a lot of things that have been released, but we've also seen Apple fix the things that weren't quite right, and that to me is great.
Smile and their amazing suite of productivity software are sponsoring today's edition of Mac Voices. Smile helps you get more done with PDF Pen, available in various flavors for Mac and iOS, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iOS, and Text Expander for Mac and iOS. Get all the details at smilesoftware.com. PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro are the choice for editing and manipulating PDFs on your Mac. With PDF Pen, you can do things that you would expect with a PDF editor: mark up PDFs, sign and fill out forms, add and edit images to PDF documents, create tables of contents, and securely redact information so it can't be read. You can also do some things you might not expect. Things like add file and audio attachments to your PDFs, digitally sign your documents with self-signed certificates, and export your PDFs to Microsoft Word for further editing or manipulation. You know those PDFs you received that were created by a scanner in someone's office? You can run optical character recognition on them to turn them into text that is fully editable. PDFpen Pro adds the ability to create links from URLs, create PDF portfolios, export to Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint, add and edit permissions, and much more. With all that, Smile is not sitting on their laurels. PDFpen 8.2 was recently released with the ability to sync all windows and tabbed windows on macOS Sierra. That enhances PDFpen's support of cloud syncing using either iCloud, if you bought through the iOS App Store, or Dropbox, no matter where you purchased. I'm betting that pretty much anything you want or need to do with PDFs can be done with PDFpen. But you need to find out for yourself. Visit smilesoftware.com right now to download a trial version of PDFpen, check it out, and decide if PDFpen suits your needs, or if the extra features of PDFpen Pro are for you. No matter which version you select, you're on your way to being more productive. And don't forget about PDFpen for iPhone and iPad, the version that brings some of the most frequently used PDF editing capabilities to iOS. That's PDFpen, PDFpen Pro, and PDFpen for iPhone and iPad, all from Smile, the makers of world-class software. Smile is the longest-running sponsor of MacVoices, and I appreciate them just as much as you do. Thank you, Smile. I agree with you. The playing devil's advocate as I usually do, the only thing that bothers me, and I don't know whose feet to lay it at. I guess if you're CEO, it has to lay at your feet. But why are certain decisions being made that seem to then have to be reversed? And the star ratings in iTunes is a perfect example. I can't
because the guy at the top is not a product guy. And that's the thing that you can quibble about. All right, so let's go back to Steve. Steve complained about. Steve said that when a company gets built by a product guy, and then that product guy, I'm trying not to be sexist there. That was Steve's terminology, but a product person, and then that product person leaves, and the bean counters take over, or the marketing people take over. And when that happens, innovation goes out the window, because what happens is the people who rise to fill that void are more interested in protecting sales and more interested in protecting profits. Now, that could actually be argued that that's what we're seeing with Apple. Tim Cook isn't a marketing guy and he's not a bean counter, but he is an operations guy and he's not a product guy. And I think that Tim is relying on people like Johnny Ive, people like Phil Schiller, people like Craig Federighi to be his product people, and that he's delegating probably a lot of decisions. I think a lot of decisions have probably been delegated to Johnny Ive, and I think that as brilliant as Johnny Ive is, and I love Johnny Ive. I love him. He is just the bee's knees, but he makes mistakes sometimes. And he makes mistakes on the interface side that he's in charge of. I think he errs in his pursuit of thinness over some functionality. But Apple then corrects those things when it needs to. And it's not like Steve was always perfect either. I mean, look at the Cube.
Oh, Brian, I think we're making a mistake to try to say that anybody is perfect and every choice is perfect. You're right. We can count a lot of missteps Apple made under Steve. We can count some that have been made under Tim Cook. Not as many because Tim hasn't been there that long. You can look around any of the tech space and see, things that were so obviously wrong in hindsight. And maybe you shouldn't have even had to have had hindsight. I'm frankly thinking BlackBerry. They stuck to their guns right as the ship went down. So I don't have problems with people making mistakes or making decisions and then having to change them, as long as they don't make too many of those. And I'm hoping we're not seeing that with Apple. I'm with you on the timetable for the Mac refreshes. In fact, I was just discussing this today by email with someone we both know, that how how frequently is too frequently, and how infrequently is too infrequently? I mean, because I don't want to buy. We saw. I think.
Listen, hold on, stop, man. This isn't what's the sound of one hand clapping. 9 to 12 months is good.
You think so?
9 to 12 months is good. Come on, 9 to 12 months is good
for a pro level Mac.
Sure.
So are you expecting me to upgrade my Macs every year?
No, you don't have to upgrade your Macs every year. That's not the point.
So okay, so go with that for a second. All right, so how often do you think I should upgrade my Mac?
Well, not to be flippant, but when you need to, when it no longer does what you need it to do. That's not the point. The point is whether or not Apple is offering products with the not only the latest technology, but also enough technology for pros in the case of pro devices, for pros to do their job. Like the video cards that are in the Mac Pro are a joke. They're a joke.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with you on that.
And yet Apple is still charging full price for those things. Doesn't make any sense. Makes no sense. There's missing information. I don't know what that missing information is. Just because Apple releases new versions of a Mac doesn't mean that you've got to have them. I mean, like our desire to always have the latest greatest is largely completely insane. I'm not advocating that sort of consumerist model. What I'm advocating is that Apple offer products that are competitive to what everybody else is doing, or better than what everybody else is doing. That's all I want.
Okay. And that's fair. I guess where I was going with it a minute ago, and I want to go back there, is it felt like to me, and I don't follow the Android market or the Samsung market or any of those that closely, but it felt like every time I turned around, there was a press release coming out about a new phone. And I'm talking about, like just a few months, to the point that you weren't able to figure out what was the current model.
Well, all right. Yeah, that's fine. But the Galaxy S line was upgraded once a year. So was the Note line. It was upgraded once a year. And they just had a jillion other products that they were trying to, saturate every potential niche that they could find in addition to those products. But their main product lines were being updated once a year. And that's a lot different than that's separate, I think, from what you're talking about.
It may be. It may be a failure of their branding to make it easy for someone who was a casual observer to say, okay, this is the red phone, and this is the blue phone, and this is the green phone, and this is what's getting updated. The red's getting updated to crimson, and the green is getting upgraded to emerald, and the blue is getting upgraded to sapphire. And I can follow that, but their branding was horrendous.
Yeah, they're a terrible company. They're a terrible company with no corporate morals. They're IP thieves. They're corrupt. They bribe people. I mean, Samsung is an absolutely miserable specimen of the corporate world. So I'm not defending Samsung in any stretch of the imagination. And I think that Apple's approach to the market is a lot more sane. But I think that 9 to 12 months, especially on the computer side, 9 to 12 months is still a reasonable schedule for updating products.
Okay, and you make a good point that at that level, you don't have to upgrade every year depending on how big the feature set or the enhancements are.
Well, but it's totally, your need to buy the latest and greatest is completely separate from Apple's need to offer the latest and greatest. The two are not married. We tend to, I mean, especially those of us who are in a position to get the latest and greatest all the time. I get a new iPhone every year. Mm-hmm. Especially now that I'm on the next plan with AT&T. I get a new iPhone every year, not because I need the new iPhone every year, but because of my job. I can justify it because I do need to be able to talk and write about whatever Apple's done. But it's not because, when I traded in my iPhone 6S for an iPhone 7, it wasn't because my iPhone 6S was suddenly obsolete and no longer any good, right? It's just because Apple has a new Mac. I'm using my laptop is a 2011 MacBook Air, And other than the fact that the battery life is down to like 2.5 hours because the battery is pretty shot. It does what I personally need my laptop to do, which is mostly writing. Writing doesn't take a lot of horsepower or anything like that. And that has nothing to do with me thinking as a pundit that Apple should be upgrading the MacBook Air with new RAM and new processors and new video cards every 9 to 12 months. 12 months is fine. I'll take that, especially with the Air. But, I don't want to go 15 months. I don't want to go 18 months. That doesn't make any sense. I certainly don't want to buy a new MacBook. Like, I would not buy a new MacBook Air right now, even though the MacBook Air is the model that very much fits my needs. I would not buy it because it's so old. So I'm just going to sit on the sidelines. Just like a lot of people were sitting on the sidelines before the new MacBook Pros were introduced, because they were waiting. I can't abide the idea of buying 18-month-old technology in a PC, or 3-year technology, 3.5 years. It was shown in June. It was introduced in June, Chuck. June of what was it? 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 14. 13, 14. No, 2013. 2013 is when the MacBook Pro was introduced. June, and it's still being sold at the same price, Chuck. It makes no sense.
You just said it, Brian. There's information missing. There's information missing, and I don't know what it is. The only thing I could possibly speculate, and you and I didn't pre-prepare this discussion, would be that it's selling well enough as it is that they don't need to. They don't feel they need to. They'd rather put their resources elsewhere. Which,
no way that thing's selling well.
And I don't believe it either. So,
but let's not even talk about Apple's resources. Apple has all the resources, right? If you stack up all the globe's resources and you stack up every other company's resources, Apple has more resources than all the other companies, right? Apple can do whatever it wants. And things like the Pro line in particular, the Mac Pro in particular, has a not only so it's an interesting thing about Apple. Apple doesn't have any loyalty to anyone. Apple doesn't have any loyalty to employees. Apple doesn't have any loyalty to customers. Apple is interested in what you're going to do for Apple tomorrow. This was a huge driving thing for Apple. Part of that thing where he talked about, like, if you create something great, don't sit around and think about how great it is. Go and do something else. That's a paraphrase.
Right.
And Steve didn't care about what this amazing thing that an employee did for him 6 months ago. He's only interested in what that employee is going to do for him tomorrow. And if that employee couldn't do something new for him tomorrow, Steve didn't care. Off you go. And that's part of what made Steve amazing and horrible. And it's part of what made Apple great. And I get that. I'm aping John Keat, the devil's advocate, who writes for us at TMO. I'm aping him on this. But pros sustained Apple when consumers had abandoned Apple when Steve Jobs first came back. It was pros that kept Apple going, buying the machines that allowed them to do art and allowed them to do music and allowed them to do video editing and stuff. And what's that face for?
That face is that I don't know a single artist that said, I'm going to choose Macintosh because I want to save Apple. They chose it because it was the best product.
Well, I know. That's actually what I mean.
Okay.
That's what I mean. I mean, they were sustaining Apple by buying the products, not necessarily because they were doing it to sustain Apple.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm saying it's the pro market that was bringing in money to Apple, and the pro market has a halo effect. Like one of the things that I've been on about is, all that free product placement that we see with Apple in TV shows and movies, right? Apple's not paying for that. Other companies pay for that. Apple doesn't pay for it. And one reason why Apple doesn't pay for it is because the people doing the movies and the TV shows, they want cool technologies on the desks of the heroes, right? They want good looking stuff sitting on those desks. But another reason is because the decision makers were usually Mac users. And they wanted to show Macs in their shows, right? They wanted their people using Macs because they liked Macs. And now that with Apple seemingly abandoning the pro video market, seemingly, and even with Apple not paying as much attention as it should to the pro recording market, there's this halo effect that is in danger of being lost. And to me, that is a short-sighted thing. So from the standpoint that Apple has all the resources on the planet, that Apple can do anything that it wants, I don't really care if the Mac Pro is a loss leader. I don't care, because it has this fantastic halo effect to it that pays enormous dividends. And I can't it's hard for me to understand how Apple could not understand that.
I'm with you on the halo effect. I also do. I guess I contest a little bit the pro video thing, because that's something I do not consider myself a pro in the video area at all. Please understand that, folks. But I do pay a lot more attention to that because I do some video editing. And so I'm intrigued, and I try to pay attention and learn from that space. And I see a lot of positive things being said about the new versions of Final Cut, the last version and the one that just came out, that there are a lot of great improvements. There are people that, you know, maybe it took them too long. I don't know, because there are a lot of people that did move over to Premiere and Avid, and there are a lot of other NOEs popping up all over the place. But so I don't know that particular characterization is fair. I cannot speak to the pro recording market. We'd have to get Jim Dalrymple in here, and he probably could give us a little better idea. But I also recognize that Apple's building machines now for a much, 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 much bigger audience. And so you're talking about loyalty. I mean, does it make business sense? The Halo, I'm with you. The Halo, I think it makes a perfect sense. But for the rest of it, does it make sense that they really should expend resources on those pro level machines? Yeah,
it does, absolutely. It's not even a choice to me. I mean, Apple built a factory to make these things in the States. That is essentially an unheard of expenditure. So if Apple is going to make that kind of investment, why not go ahead and invest in updating those machines?
Do you have to retool the factory? Is that part of the problem?
If they design their factory to have to be retooled just because there's an upgraded component, well, then Apple's doing it wrong, and Apple doesn't do things like that wrong. Apple happens to be one of the premier manufacturing companies on the planet. You know, I mean, like we talk about Apple's supply chain and how much it outsources. Apple has essentially unprecedented control over third parties making their stuff. And those third parties are oftentimes using Apple invented processes and Apple invented machines to do their stuff, because Apple would rather let other people who are more adept at manufacturing manage the process, but Apple is bringing the innovation in terms of that process to market, right? So if there's no way that Apple designed a factory in Austin, Texas, that would need like complete retooling just because a machine was updated. Well, what I really hope on the Mac Pro front is that Apple realized that the trash can format was flawed and is just doing something completely new from the ground up, and that's why it's taken so long to bring it to market. That's what I hope is the case. I hope that's the missing information.
That would make sense.
But I would be more sanguine about that if that thing was half the price. They're gonna keep selling that piece of junk. They should sell it at half the price.
Yeah, but you know that too is not Apple's way.
Well, now we say that, but it is unprecedented for Apple. Well, is it entirely unprecedented? I guess the previous cheese grater device was also in the market for a long time at the same price. But no, that price came down a little bit over time.
A little bit, but not 50%.
No, not 50%.
Yeah.
Not 50%. Fair enough.
Okay.
I'd take a 25% reduction. I would take any kind of price reduction. It's still the same price that it was, and that those components are old. They're old. They're crap.
Would you take a set of Ginsu knives?
I mean, it was 6 months between it being introduced and its shipping. I mean, that is a huge gap.
Yeah. You okay?
Next. No.
Okay.
A little cranky, a little tense.
All right. Well, then let's kind of end on some good news. Okay. We're seeing an amazing amount of demand for the new MacBook Pro.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yeah, despite people like me going, yeah, it's not pro enough. Yeah.
Well, and thank you, because I was going to go there a little bit later. But
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. And let's be fair here. There seem to be some technical reasons that Apple decided that they had to only go to 16 gigs.
There are technical reasons imposed by the form factor, so don't give me that crap. I'm not buying it. No one said that this thing it's like you got to make it 30% or 23%, 17% thinner. Is that right?
Yeah, but there are power consumption issues too.
Yeah, fine. If it's bigger, it can have a bigger battery. So don't give me that crap.
But now you just made it bigger and you made it heavier. And
okay.
And
okay.
And it's
because that's what pros need. Go ahead.
But it's a portable. Okay, that's kind of my point.
So was yesterday's Mac Pro just like completely unusable? No.
You mean MacBook Pro?
MacBook Pro, yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But now,
if Apple had made it half as thinner, and half as lighter, it would have been amazing.
You think that would have made the difference? That little bit of battery would have offset all the other issues?
I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know either.
I'm guessing it would have made a significant difference. Yes. I believe that the form factor that they chose is imposing the limitations, and that is an ass backwards way to think about it.
And I'm not sure. I'm not an engineer enough to know.
I am.
You are.
Wait, no, I'm not.
Congratulations.
Yeah. No, totally not.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it did seem like a weird choice. I grant you. At the same time, I sit and think, okay, how many times? Yes, do I want more RAM? Of course I want more RAM. I always want more RAM. But do I really need it? And so, is this machine hobbled for what I want to do with it? No, it's going to be better, and I don't have one in my hands, so I'm making certain assumptions.
All right, let's not relitigate that. You were going to talk about the demand on it. You were talking about.
I'm talking about the demand, but I guess in looking at it, I'm going to get a superior machine. Sure. I expect. All right, so it is. It's
too bad it only has 16 gigs of RAM. I've got 24 gigs of RAM in this iMac, by the way, and I have memory management issues all the time. Right now, what do I have? What do I have right now in my 24 gig of RAM iMac? Oh, hello, Safari. Oh, you're using 13 gigs of RAM? That seems reasonable. What do I have? Oh, I have 32,000 page outs. Oh, that's great. Well, to be fair, I've got tons of uptime, a whole 18 hours. So I should have 32,000 page outs with 24 gigs of RAM. I have negative 38 megs of RAM free at the moment. I mean, just 16 gigs of. Okay, so anyway, I'm really sorry that you're getting a new machine that only has 16 gigs of RAM, because that sucks.
Well, listen, if I could get 32, of course I'd rather have 32. No question about it. To go back to the demand, though, I mean, this is obviously satisfying somebody's needs, because it is an expensive machine. There's no question about that. And yet people are shelling out the money for it. And yet, just as you said, the previous MacBook Pro runs just fine. So there was a pent-up demand. There was a demand that Apple met. I hate to say this, but was it good enough? Was it good enough with that and the Touch Bar?
It's okay. First of all, we do have to look at the fact that year-over-year Mac sales have been declining for the previous 3 quarters. So we absolutely have pent-up demand. So the real question is how long these seemingly high hold on. I had an important text. I apologize. The question is how long that demand lasts. If for instance, if we have just a month of high sales and then it peters out, well, then there's an issue. If these high sales continue, then clearly all of the people like me who are whinging about this product are just wrong, and the market loves it. And if that's the case, then giddy up. Right? Are you with me there?
Yeah.
So we won't know. We won't really know the answer to this question until 3 to 6 months have elapsed.
Okay, that's
and it wouldn't surprise me, by the way. It wouldn't surprise me if I'm completely wrong, and it wouldn't surprise me if the other wonders are completely wrong.
Bryan, are we back to the discussion that I think we've had this before, that we are not the audience for these machines anymore. The geeks are not the audience. I think you can argue there's some productivity people out there that are the audience, but the audience is broad. The audience is very broad. Is it just, is that the reason that we tend to complain? Complain about it.
Well, I mean, the audience is really broad, and yet Mac sales have been declining for 3 quarters in a row. So, you tell me.
Well, I think there's a computer saturation out there, that because we're seeing PC sales decline as well overall.
Yeah, so then Apple is no longer leeching PC sales. Why? Right? That was sustaining a lot of Apple's growth was switchers. So if that's no longer happening, why is that? Is it possibly because the hardware is outdated? Maybe.
Or there's just we've run out of switchers.
Really though? Have we really run out of switchers? I kind of doubt that. Not potential switchers.
I don't know. I mean, I still see people that are going to make their next computer purchase a Mac, or they're certainly talking in that direction.
Well, yeah, I think you and I have a bit of confirmation bias there. I think we are surrounded by people in our lives who like Apple products.
No, I'm talking about PC people that are come to me and say, tell me about a Mac. That's what I mean. So okay. I don't think we're running out of switches, is what I'm saying. I think that people don't make those switches as often as maybe they used to. So, but
why? Why is that?
Because at some point, the machines that they have, they may not even like them, but they're good enough. They're good enough, well, and so they're waiting for them to break. That's been the case
for a while, though.
Well, maybe so.
I don't know. We'll see in the next 3 to 6 months if Apple did it right with this MacBook Pro. And my guess is, honestly, is that Apple did, and that people like me who are complaining about this are going to look like idiots. That's my honest guess. It's my just completely dispassionate looking down from above. I'm going to guess that I'm going to look like an idiot, and I'm okay with that. Kind of, it's what I do sometimes.
Well, I don't, that's the beauty about some of these discussions. I'm not sure there really is a right or wrong. It's just because there are a million other factors out there that can affect it. So,
for instance, the global economy could collapse, but we're not going to talk about that, are we?
No, we're not going to. Or it could boom.
Sure.
Sure.
How about this? I will take a wagon train east, and you can take a wagon train west, and we'll meet in the middle and trade each other for dinner or something.
Kansas City?
Kansas City. There we go.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
If we survive the trek, we'll meet, and the winner is going to trade his shoes for dinner for the other person.
Somehow, I think that we'd probably both starve because we'd be arguing about who actually won.
Maybe,
but at least we'd be in Kansas City. So.
That's true. Yeah. Well, or alternately, unfortunately, we'd be in Kansas City. I'm kidding, Kansas City. You're wonderful folks. The barbecue is terrific.
It's TM O'Brien at.
Kansas City is a lovely place.
Yeah, I've had some great steaks in Kansas City. So
I'm a left coast liberal elitist snob. I will own it. I will own it with my dirty Jesus look. I will embrace you. Come, Chuck. Come and embrace the glorious enlightenment that I represent, or something.
Bryan.
What's up, Chuck? How's it going, brother?
Where can people find you when you're not here proselytizing.
I'm going to guess in the bottom of a shallow grave at some point if I keep this up. That's where I'm going to guess that people can find me.
Until that happens.
Until that happens, I am, believe it or not, the editor-in-chief of the Mac Observer. It's macobserver.com. You can find my personal blog at geektells.com. That's TELLS. And I'm TM O'Brien on Twitter.
It's always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for at least saying so.
It is.
All right. Blessings be upon thee.
Good day, mate. Private joke.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Notables on Mac Voices. We have way too much fun here. I hope you do too, even listening to us, because it's just, that's all it's supposed to be, is fun. Maybe a little educational, but definitely fun. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the Mac Voices blog, the Mac Voices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.